clean the dust off. Hopefully that's better. Good morning and welcome to the shop. Today we're going to be working on the Mustang again. We're going to be checking out the interior and talking about my plans for this car going forward. I've been doing some more research off camera, so I am looking forward to telling you guys what I have found because our plans for this car have changed just a little bit. But I pushed it back in this corner so I could have some room to do some cleaning and straightening and organizing with the rest of the shop. So let's get it pulled back out and start diving into the interior. So, this is the interior. The seats are, well, I can't find where to adjust the driver's seat from. Passenger seat, the release lever isn't working, so it's stuck really far forward. It's got these seat covers on it. I haven't cleaned the interior since I bought it. That's my bad. I probably should have done that sooner rather than later. But it was just kind of put on the back burner, put in the garage for storage until I had time to work on it. Surprise, I have time to work on it now. So that means we're gonna dive into the interior and probably just do a time lapse, and then I'll talk about the plan for the interior based on what I find after I get these seat covers off, get some of the spider webs cleaned out because there are possibly still living spiders inside this car. So we'll jump into a time lapse. I'll throw on some music or something, and then we'll get the seats out, get the seat covers off, and then figure out what the interior looks like. Because honestly, it's a mystery. It could be fine, or it could be total replacement. We'll have to see. So cue the music, and yeah, sit back, relax, get a drink if you want, and come along for the ride. That was terrible. I just keep rambling forever. Okay.
Whispers in my mind, I slowly drifting by. All the poems I wrote for you, they made me blind, they made me lie. Heard you in the rain, will you always be there? Last thing you said, sorry if it's too late. Heard you in the rain, will you always be there?
Well, now the seats are out. You can see how dirty it is. Thankfully, it doesn't smell. It just kind of smells a little dusty, a little musty, kind of like a car that hasn't been cleaned in 20 years. Let's see, we've got an amp, we've got a paintbrush on the other side. Let's go ahead and walk around. On the other side, we have some lovely loose change. We've got a pencil. The other half of the pencil is kind of jammed up behind the radio in the head unit. We have a tissue with who knows what on it. We've got random little nuts or bits of food, whatever that round thing is. Is that like a seed from a tree or something? But I'm gonna get this cleaned up. I also found out why our seats don't move. So this is the driver's seat. And if we look at the bottom, we see it's got power moving. So I forget if I knew this before, but the little joystick was kind of hidden by the seat cover. So I might have been able to move that to get to these bolts easier. But this one, the passenger seat, sorry for that noise. This one's manual. the lever works and releases this side, so it can move freely, but it's supposed to have a lever or something that connects to this other side. So even if I do this and this side can move, that side is still locked in place and it can't move. So I would have had to pull on this or do something to get it. I don't know. Either way, these are out. I'm not trying to keep this period correct, so these probably won't go back in. They're kind of filthy. I haven't even looked under the seat covers yet to see if they're destroyed, but I'll get to that next.
Cloudy skies and lips of fire and stars between these two worlds. You try to find your own. I try to run, try to hide. I needed to survive. Heard you in the rain. Will you always be there? The last thing you said. Sorry if it's too late. Heard you in the rain. Will you?
Okay, so I went through and just vacuumed up all the big stuff from the interior. It's not detailed or finished by any means. We got the seat covers pulled off. The seats really aren't as bad as I was expecting. A little bit of like crusted white stuff. I don't know if that's paint or something. A couple holes in the seat. Nothing terrible. Kind of what I was expecting. Seat covers seem to have done their job, at least from protecting from the sun and the most of the dirt and stuff. Judging by what was on the floor underneath the seats, it was just filthy. But these seats cleaned up all right. Again, not finished. We've got some mysterious crusty stuff. Could be dust, could be drywall mud, a little bit of paint, I don't know. We got the standard hole in the driver's side bolster from getting in and out of the vehicle repeatedly. But yeah, these aren't too terrible. Let's look at the driver's side and just see. Carpet isn't super terrible or torn up. It's kind of worn through and has some kind of serious sticky stuff that's kind of stuck in the carpet. So that could be scrubbed out and saved if I really, really had to. Some of the other interior stuff, like this inside, that's not just crusty stuff. That's just kind of filthy in there. But yeah, there's no loose chunks that I could clean up with the vacuum. So the actual like plastic itself isn't terrible. It's just dirty. So I could probably clean it up. Things like these vents around the shifter. It's just dirty and kind of loose. Little vent up here is missing. The doors, again, I mentioned this in the earlier video, we've got a little bit of peeling here from this vinyl. This always seems to come loose on this era of Mustangs. We have manual windows on both sides. But like the grills for the speakers aren't totally smashed in. The HVAC vents, you can see, are kind of filthy looking, so I'm sure there's all kinds of dust and dirt inside there. Part of me wants to just tear the interior down completely, get the carpet out, and see what the sheet metal looks like underneath. Also give me a good opportunity to clean everything. But that's kind of what I want to talk about next. Yeah, so what I wanted to talk about is the plan for this car. After doing more research and kind of reading up on how other people have done coyote swaps, it's not uncommon. I don't want to say kits because it's not just an easy, you buy one kit, bolt everything on, and it's a coyote swap. It's not quite that easy. There's a million different combinations and ways to do it. And since we're starting with a 94 chassis specifically, that throws a wrench into things. If this was a 99 to 04, if it was a V8 car to begin with, it would make things a lot easier. But because this is a V6, because it's a 94, there are a couple different things to consider. So one is the rear axle, the other one is in the engine bay. So let's go talk about those and I'll show you what I mean. Under the hood of our 94 V6 Mustang, we've got the 3.8 V6, this is the brake system. So on the 94 to 97, I believe, they have this big vacuum assist power brakes. This is pretty common on almost any car. It uses a vacuum line from the engine. That extra pressure works on a diaphragm inside here and helps push the brakes when you apply pressure with the brake pedal. On this one, I think in 1998 is when they switched over to a hydro boost. So it uses hydraulic pressure from the power steering pump, which is right down here on the V6 engine, and it uses pressure, like hydraulic pressure instead of vacuum pressure, to help you push the brakes and squeeze the brake pads against the brake rotor. And because of that system, this gigantic, like 8-inch diameter is not in there. It's a lot smaller. I'll try and find a picture of it to throw up on screen. And I believe that was used from either 97 or 1998 through 2004. The 2005 Mustang is a start of a new chassis, so I don't know what brakes those used. So most people that do a coyote swap into a Fox body platform, which is a 79 to like 93 or 92, or people who have an early version of the SN95 platform, which is from 1994 to 2004, they have to get the Hydro Boost brake system, otherwise the engine just won't fit. But if you're doing this into a 99 to 04, something that already has the Hydro Boost, it's going to fit and you don't have to worry about this. But since we have the 94 and we have that big brake housing, the Coyote engine is not going to fit. So that's item number one. Item number two is the steering. So I'm going to go under the car and get the light down there so you guys can see what I'm talking about. This car, the 1994 to 2004, they had hydraulic power steering. Same thing with the Fox body Mustangs. It mounts using 2 bolts onto the K-member. One is there, one is on the other side. The K-member is basically the cross member that goes underneath the engine and holds it to the 2 side rails or side pieces of the chassis. But this car, the SN95 platform, has hydraulic power steering. The newer cars, I forget if the 2005 Mustang has it, those switched over to electronic power steering. So they don't have a power steering pump, they don't have like hydraulic lines or hydraulic fluid that can leak. It's all just run off of the alternator and done electronically. So if we want to get a Coyote engine from a newer vehicle from, let's say, a 2011 to 2014 is kind of what I'm looking at. Those do not have a power steering pump. And the electronic power steering rack will not mount up in the same position. It'd be a completely different crossmember. I don't know if that crossmember will bolt up into this chassis without extreme modifications. So most people who do Coyote swaps keep it hydraulic power steering. They just get an aftermarket hydraulic power steering pump and put that on the engine and kind of reroute the serpentine belt in order to keep their power steering. That is the easiest way. I think trying to make the electronic power steering would be too much of a hassle. So that is kind of item number 2 that I found in my recent research between the last video. So this is how the suspension is set up on the 94 to 2004. Basically it's the same. For all SN95s, you have the axle tube is in the middle, you have your shock behind the axle, and then the spring perch is actually off of this trailing arm, or this lower control arm. On newer Mustangs, what we're looking to get the engine from, I was originally thinking you could use the same axle because a lot of the internals are the same. They have the same ring gear diameter, they have the same number of splines on the axle shafts, and you just, if the distance is a little different, you can use different offset on your wheels in order to space it so it fits inside the fender. That's what I was thinking. But I found out, I'll put up some pictures on the screen, the way that the newer vehicles do their suspension is completely different. So the shock is still behind the axle shaft, the center line of the housing, but the spring is on top of the axle. It is no longer on the lower control arm, and it looks like the way the lower control arms and the center like adjustment arm, I don't really know what you would call that, but the upper control arm and the lower control arm are different on the newer Mustangs, the S197 platform, which is what we're looking to get our engine from. So we wouldn't be able to fit the newer axle housing into the older chassis without some extreme modifications, either to the axle or to the suspension geometry. So that is our third kind of little snafu of things I found in my research. Okay, so we've identified 3 different kind of issues that I didn't initially plan for. The rear axle from a newer S197 chassis that has the Coyote engine, that axle will not just fit up with this chassis without major modifications and changes to suspension geometry, so that's a problem. Second problem is the power steering. The newer Mustangs that have Coyote engines, they all have electronic power steering. They have different steering racks. It mounts up in a different way than this 94 chassis has. And the other issue is the brakes. The booster, it is just too big to fit a Coyote engine. We're gonna have to do something about that and switch to a smaller brake booster. So, what does that mean? Good news. We can find all of the parts we need pretty easily. There's Mustangs everywhere. The swap is not uncommon. We just have to do a few more steps in order to make it work with our chassis. Now you might be asking, well, why am I putting all this effort into swapping? Mustangs aren't that expensive. Why can't you just go buy a nicer Mustang that already has a V8 in it? And to that I say, I don't know. I'm already invested in this car, and this isn't just, oh, I've put too much money into it, I can't give up now. This is, even if I tried to get rid of it, no one's gonna give me money for a V6 Mustang with a blown engine. So, I think we can still do this on a budget, and the way we can do that is, instead of buying just the axle we need used off of eBay or something, trying to find the brake booster, trying to get the engine from a junkyard, trying to find a transmission somewhere. Those would be cheap options compared to trying to do brand new stuff. You can buy brand new Coyote crate engines, you can buy transmissions that'll handle the power and be perfect and brand new and shiny, but that's not going to be budget friendly. So at this time, I can't do that option. What I was planning on doing is buying a salvaged car that's wrecked, has a destroyed body, but still has good driveline components. And then I was just going to take those components and bolt them onto the car I already have. That is not going to work for some of the components. So instead of buying one car and putting them into this chassis that I already have, I'm going to buy two cars and put them into this chassis that I already have. So anyway, that's kind of the plan going forward, is I'm thinking we get two cars off of Copart. We get a 99 to 04 V8 car. The engine could be smashed up because we don't need it. We basically just need the rear axle from it and some of the brake components. And then we get the Coyote engine and the transmission that can handle the power. We get that from a 2011 to 2014 Mustang. And then we can sell the parts that we don't need to try and keep this on a budget. So if you're interested in seeing that and seeing how budget friendly we can actually make this happen, definitely subscribe to see where we go with this. I will have other videos coming in the meantime because this project is going to go a little bit slower for the next couple weeks while I figure out how to buy stuff on Copart. So I have, let's see, I have a project in those two boxes over there. And I've been hinting at this project for a long time, and I think it's time to open that box and get that project out and get it finished. So if you want to see what happens with those two boxes, definitely subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.